Good morning, everyone, and welcome to First Tuesdays. First Tuesdays is a monthly webinar that's hosted by the Washington State Library. We're going to go through just a little bit of introduction to our webinar and some general housekeeping. So let me make sure I do this correctly. There we go. So first of all, I am your facilitator, Nona Burling. You can see me up there. For technical support today, we have Jeremy Stroud and Joe Olivar. And if you two wouldn't mind putting your contact information in the chat in case anyone has any need for help, that would be useful because I'm going to move on from this slide very soon. So if you are having any technical difficulties, just check in the chat and you'll get a number or email to contact. So as I said, this webinar is brought to you by the Office of the Secretary of State. The Washington State Library is one of the divisions, and the Institute of Museum and Library Services is our funder. And while I'm mentioning IMLS, I should say just at the very end, because we're funded by IMLS, we need to gather statistics. So when the webinar is over and you close it down, you'll notice on your screen there is a brief 4-question survey. If you can take the time and answer those 4 questions, we would really appreciate it. That will help us with our funders. And well, I should have probably not gone to a black screen, but let me just introduce our presenter today. Nick Madsen, who works for the Community Library Network in Northern Idaho, is our presenter. And I first heard about him when a colleague of mine went to a pre-conference at PNLA last summer and just said it was one of the best pre-conferences that she had ever attended and suggested I contact Nick, and he very graciously agreed to hold a webinar for us. So here's what Nick has to say about himself. It says his library career began as a page, and he has been planning programs and events for elementary through high school students for the past several years, working with STEAM tools like 3D printers, creating movies with teens in just a few hours, that sounds like a feat, and hosting Nerf Battles after hours. Nick is always on the lookout for the next crazy thing to attempt. I think I want to come work with you, Nick. Nick received his Master's in Information and Library Science in December of 2013 and has enjoyed presenting at several conferences, including the Idaho Library Association and the Pacific Northwest Library Association, where my colleague attended your pre-conference. As a member of SPLAT, which has to be one of the world's greatest acronyms, SPLAT stands for Special Project Library Action Team. So he's a member of SPLAT through the Idaho Commission for Libraries, and he recently had the privilege of attending PNLA Leads, which is a biennial leadership institute offered by the Pacific Northwest Library Association. So Nick has requested that we save questions to the end, but we really encourage you as they come up to put them in chat. And once he's done, we will get back to them. So I'm going to now stop talking and let Nick take over because he's who you came to hear. Thanks, everyone.
And good morning, everyone. Want to make sure that I'm actually going to be sharing my screen right now. It's going to, yes, let's see here. And we want to do this one. Aha. So Jeremy, can everyone see that? Can you see that?
Yes, I see it.
Oh, fantastic. No, thank you so much. Everyone wanted to make sure that technical side was working, and Jeremy and Joe, thank you so much for making sure that stuff is working correctly. Everyone, good morning. Welcome to our Nerf webinar, Chaos with a Purpose. It is a little bit of chaos while things are getting going, but it is a lot of fun. It's a program that we find is very successful, and I'm excited to share it with you this morning. Obviously, the first problem is a webinar about Nerf is not going to be as fun as playing Nerf. So if you can find Nerf Blaster anytime today and shoot a target or jump in with a friend, that would obviously be a fun thing to do. But right now, just wanted to kind of start off with, how did all of this start? For us, we didn't have a particular goal of starting a physical activity for the students. There wasn't a huge goal on how do we bring students in. What it really came down to was what is going to be a program that students are going to be enjoying. And we were brainstorming. I was sitting around and I said to myself, I like playing Nerf. A lot of my friends like playing Nerf when we were in high school. I wonder if students would come down to the library, just bring a Nerf gun, and I wonder if we would do that after hours and if this would be successful. And it actually turned out to be hugely successful. We do Nerf battles now once a month, and it is something that is a lot of fun. So this morning, what we wanted to focus on were some of the scenarios that we like to play at our Nerf battles. Wanted to give you a little bit of legwork on why we choose to do those scenarios, some of the mitigating factors that you might want to be considering in building those games that the kids are going to be playing. Also wanted to give you a little bit of information on how we set up our Nerf battles. We've learned a couple of things in the 3 or 4 years that we've been doing our Nerf battles, and you can kind of learn from some of those pieces. And then also wanted to give you a couple ideas, a couple of questions to consider if this is something that you wanted to bring to your library. With that kind of as an introduction, I wanted to do a quick poll, actually, with all of you. And at the moment, let's see. There was actually a poll option just a moment ago. And Jeremy, as I'm clicking on Zoom, there we go. Thank you so much. I appreciate you throwing that up.
When you're sharing, your toolbar is going to be at the top of the screen instead of the bottom.
Oh, thank you. You did mention, so Jeremy did mention that while he was prepping me for the webinar. Totally forgot that. So Jeremy, thank you so much for throwing that up for me. I appreciate it. And everyone, thank you so much for answering that poll there. It's actually kind of fun to watch that in real life. That's fantastic.
I believe only the panelists get to see that in real time. However, we can share the results afterwards. So
absolutely, that makes total sense. Okay, we're getting there. We have about 80% of people that have voted on our poll here. As you can see, the question is, does your library do team programming currently? And that's a question. I find that so many libraries that I come into contact with have a very robust program for those younger students. They probably have a couple after-school programs for the elementary school kids. They're probably out in their communities. But for those teens, it is an audience that is very difficult to reach. And so we were very excited when our Nerf battles were so successful with that audience. But I also know that it's something that many libraries don't have the staff or the opportunity to do team programming. So I kind of wanted to get an idea of where all of you were sitting at this time. At this point, it looks like 5 of our attendees say yes, they do offer team programs currently. There were 2 attendees that said that they do not have team programs at the moment. And then there were 7 of our participants that said kind of sorta on our poll there. So thank you so much for, oh, I'm sorry. I'm presenting through some headphones and I just yanked them off of my head. So I apologize for that quick jerking sound there. One more thing that I wanted to mention before we kind of get rolling here was, why do we do Nerf battles? And why was that something that we feel fits in with the mission of our library? I am very blessed to have my boss and my boss's boss be very encouraging and be very supportive of the sometimes crazy ideas that we come up with. Having a library do a Nerf battle seems kind of like an oddball kind of a thing. But what we find is doing these Nerf battles brings teams in numbers that are unprecedented for us. And we also see that it gives those teens a familiarity with the library. And it also lets them know that the library is here for them. If you have a student that comes in, they're coming in after hours, which for them is something that is really cool. They're able to see a library at a time that no one else is there. It is just special for those young people. And they think that is very cool. And then they also come in and we're doing something that doesn't have a specific educational journey that we want to put them on. It's more come in, have a good time, hang out with staff members. And we find that students have come back in afterwards and they say, oh man, you're that Nerf battle guy, right? Or they come in and they say, hey, I came to your Nerf battle and this is the kind of book that I would like to read. What do you have for me? And so you're actually going to be building those relationships with those teams. And that is the primary reason that we have these Nerf battles, is to get them familiar with staff, but also to get them familiar with the building. Another cool thing that Nerf battles do is it allows you to promote other teen offerings that you might have, because you have all these students that are here and you say, hey, you should also come to our Stranger Things event, or you should also come to our Make a Movie event that's going on next week. And so that is something that we find is also a huge boon to having these Nerf battles. At the moment, I just had one more poll that I also wanted to throw at you guys, kind of just give an idea of, are you kind of open to the idea of doing Nerf battles at your library? Or right now, do you think that it would not be terribly successful? Or do you think it would be fantastically successful? And as we're going through the webinar, we once again are going to be giving you some tips and tricks that we've learned along the way. And I also wanted to give you kind of my planning process in why I do some of the scenarios and why we do some of the things that we do. So then you can kind of see why we have those things, instead of just being, well, here is the firm X, Y, and Z, you do A, B, C, and your Nerf battle is going to be fantastic. I think your Nerf battle is going to be fantastic, but wanted to kind of give you those ideas behind so you can kind of do your planning as well. Right now we have about 65% of our attendees that have answered the poll. As you can see, it's just, do you think that it would be the worst thing that ever happened? Do you think that it would be one of the best programs that you've ever had? Or do you think it might be somewhere in between? And feel free to throw that up there. And we have about 4 more participants that we're waiting for, and then we can kind of talk about that. And once again, thank you so much for jumping onto the polls. On this Zoom feature for First Tuesdays, this is the first time that a panelist has used the poll, so we also kind of wanted to see the functionality of it. And thank you so much for participating in our poll here. Have about 2 more participants that we're waiting for. At the moment, we have 1 person that said that it would probably be the worst thing that's ever happened at their library. We have about 7 people that have said it could be one of the best programs that they've ever had. And then we also have 7 participants that have said that it's probably going to be somewhere in between. Thank you so much for participating in that poll. Really appreciate it. And we hope that at the end of this webinar, you feel prepared if it's something that you actually did want to do. I hope that you gather some ideas from this webinar. And I don't believe that on my slides, I've actually shared my email address. So that's something that I'll definitely put into the chat before our time is up here. That way, if you have further questions or you get really excited about doing a Nerf battle and you say, hey, just have 1 or 2 more things I want to run past you, please use me as a resource. I would love to chat more with you about these ideas. And right now, I think we are just going to be jumping in to kind of some of the Nerf scenarios that we like to use. And once again, kind of give you the ideas of why do we do these scenarios. This picture here was actually from one of our October Nerf battles. A participant came up to us and said, hey, I have a T-Rex suit in my bag. Do you think that there might be a scenario that we can use this T-Rex costume in? And I said, yes, please. That's fantastic. So what we actually wound up doing was zombie apocalypse is one of our favorite scenarios that we played our Nerf battles. And so we actually incorporated the T-Rex as a time-traveling T-Rex that is impervious to the zombies, impervious to the hunters, and he just went around causing chaos. But it was a lot of fun. The students had a good time with it, and it was fantastic to see those participants getting involved and trying to come up with ideas for the Nerf battle as well. So as I mentioned, zombie apocalypse is one of our favorite scenarios. And the basic idea of that scenario is you start off with 3 or 4 of your students designated as zombies. Those zombies do not have a Nerf gun, and they have the task of going around trying to tag the other participants that do have Nerf weapons. If a zombie gets hit by a Nerf bullet, they go down on the ground for 5 seconds, and then they come back up. And when a zombie touches a participant that is not a zombie, the participant puts their gun on a table, and then they become a zombie. And so by the end of the scenario, you have about you have 1 or 2 people left that have their Nerf guns. Everyone else is walking around. They're dragging their legs. They're, And of course, at the same time, we also have one of our staff members in the back of the library flipping the lights on and off. And so it makes for a really immersive experience. And that is something that I wanted to encourage you as you are building your Nerf scenarios. Be thinking about things that are going to be drawing them in. Zombie apocalypse, I feel, also works very well because it is very familiar to the students that are going to be coming in, because they're doing these scenarios on the video games that they're playing. Or if they're doing capture the flag, or they're playing with their friends, having kind of that zombie motif is something that they've probably done. And so we find that zombie apocalypse is one of our most asked for scenarios while we're at our Nerf battles, and it is a lot of fun to do. And so building that immersive experience and finding things that, what are some of those video games that they might be playing? Or what are some of those tag elements that we might be able to bring into this scenario that we're putting in front of the students? At the moment, also wanted to just jump to the next slide. And another thing that I wanted to mention here is there's going to always be those 1 or 2 students that come to your event, and they're going to be the students that are not quite following the rules. You say if you get hit by a Nerf bullet, then you're going to be out. And you have that student that no matter how many times they're hit, they are just going to stand there, I wasn't hit, I shot you first, what are you talking about? And that can obviously be very frustrating for those students that are following the rules. And so I also try to build scenarios that are not going to be penalizing those students that are actually following the rules. And one way that we've done that is just slightly adjusting some of the scenarios that we've tried. Capture the flag is another one of those scenarios that students are always asking for. Oh, can we play capture the flag? But once again, you typically have those students that are not quite following the rules. They're the students that are the ones that get the flags. And even though they've actually been hit 4 or 5 times, they ran across the line and said, oh yeah, totally got it, not a big deal. So something that we wound up doing is doing one-way capture the flag. And so one team is actually trying to defend the flag. And then you have the other group of students that is trying to run in and get the flag. And what we found with that is it lowers that threshold for students following the rules, because instead of there being many students that have the opportunity to kind of skirt around the rules are a little bit simpler. And it's also going to be that you're giving power to those defending students, in which case they're going to be able to defend their flags better. Another thing that we try to do in our scenarios is lower the consequences of following the rules. If you have a 10-minute scenario And your rule is if you get hit by a Nerf bullet, you are out for the rest of the round. If you're unfortunately hit by a Nerf bullet in the first 2 minutes, then you have 8 minutes that you're sitting around waiting for the next round to start. And so what we try to do is build scenarios where they are able to respawn. So if you're hit by a Nerf dart, you can go back to a respawn point and then you can come back in. Or we try to do scenarios like prisoners. And what happens with prisoners is you have a no person's zone in between your two teams. And if you are hit by a Nerf dart, you go into a prisoner's area. And in the middle of that no person zone is a big release button. And so in that no person zone, you are not allowed to fire your Nerf weapon. And so you are able to run in, try to touch the release button to release all the prisoners on your team. But you're not allowed to be firing your Nerf gun during that time. And so what we found that did is students were more apt to follow the rules because instead of it being, oh man, if I admit that I got hit, I'm gonna have to wait out for the next 8 minutes. Instead, they're able to watch the action as it's happening. They're going to just that prison area, and they know that as soon as one of their teammates hits that release button, they're gonna be able to get right back into the action. And so lowering those consequences has really helped those students that might not want to follow the rules. It helps them to follow the rules, which is, I find that works really well. Another scenario that we tried recently is a tank battle. We find that we have rolly chairs all over our library. So if you come in to use our computer stations, you have a purple chair, it has 4 wheels on it, and the students would use those rolly chairs to kind of scoot around the library. We discourage that as it's going to be damaging those chairs faster than they should be. But I also wanted to give those students a chance to use those chairs. And so what I did is we did tank battle. We said that you would have groups of 3. One student would be the pilot of your tank, which is actually just that rolly chair. And then you would have 2 gunners that were also in your tank. And your 2 gunners would have to be touching the chair at all times. And your gunner, your pilot would also be touching the chair at all times. And then your other teams would be trying to hit the back of your chair. And if they did, everyone in your tank would have to rotate. And if your tank was hit 3 times, your tank would be out of commission until the end of the round. And so you are trying to create those unique playing experiences. The first time that you do a Nerf battle, you can really just say, you 10 students over there, you 10 students over that way, and have at it. And they will have a fantastic time. And if you did that scenario every single time, your students would still have a great time at your Nerf battle. But it also is a lot of fun for those students to try different scenarios, to have something different to do. And so we constantly try to have a scenario that they know, possibly doing that one-way capture the flag or doing zombie apocalypse. Zombie apocalypse is something that we do pretty much every single Nerf battle, but we also try to have 1 or 2 scenarios that are brand new to just give those kids something new that they can be trying. And then one more scenario that we wanted to mention to you guys. This is one that we just figured out. We just tried to do this one. And the basic idea is you have 5 players that would have Nerf guns. Everyone else would not have a Nerf gun. And when you, as the person with the Nerf gun, if you shoot someone that does not have a Nerf gun, you give the Nerf gun to them, and then they are it, if that makes sense. Now that sounds like a lot of fun, but the student that has the gun is going to want to keep the gun. They have the power. It's fun to run around going, ooh, I'm the one that has the gun. So in order to kind of adjust the focus, it works to give them a goal to work toward. And so what we thought we would do is we would have the 2 teams. You would start off with one team having the having the 5 guns, the other team would not have the 5 guns. But the one team that has the 5 guns, at the end of a 5-minute period or a 10-minute period, you want it to be that no one on your team has a gun. And so that gives them that goal to work toward. So then instead of wanting to keep the gun as long as they can, they are going to want to try to find someone on the other team and make sure that they have the gun. That way at the end of those 5 to 10 minutes, their team is the one that wins. And so giving them a goal to work toward in the scenario can alleviate a lot of those problems or a lot of those bottlenecks that might happen in the scenarios that you're trying. So those are just a few of the scenarios that we have tried with our students that our students have a lot of fun with. But we've had so many different scenarios that we've tried over the years. I should probably mention at this time that we've been doing Nerf battles for probably 3 to 4 years now. We started off doing them about once a quarter. We would try it for summer reading, and then we would do it in the fall, and then we would try it again in the spring. And each time that we did it, we found that we were getting more and more students that were interested. And we were also getting students that would come up to our circulation desk, and they were saying, "When is your next Nerf battle? That was the best time ever. Oh man, when are you doing that again?" And so now we do a Nerf battle once a month. I mentioned that I worked at the Community Library Network. The Community Library Network is 7 libraries in North Idaho and also a bookmobile. And so what we do is we do Nerf battles at our 2 biggest libraries, and we bounce them back and forth once a month. So one month it'll be at our Hayden Library, which is one of our larger branches, and then the next month it'll be at the Post Falls Library, and then back and forth. What we find is that some students are so excited to play Nerf that they will follow us no matter which library it's at. And then you have other students that'll just come to the Hayden battle or just come to the Post Falls battle. But we find that once a month works really well for us. We also found that doing it after hours works well for our students. We do it on a 3rd Friday. That way it is consistent for our students. They know that the 3rd Friday is always going to be when we are doing our Nerf battle. And we always do it at the same time, 6:30 to 8:30 in the evening. So just a little bit after dinner, but not too late. It also is convenient because 6 o'clock is when the Post Falls Library closes, and 6:30 gives us a little bit of time to reset the library, make sure that everyone that needed a ride home got a ride home, and then the students are allowed to come back in and start doing the Nerf battles. Right now, I wanted to actually jump into a trivia question for everyone. So if you could put into the chat the answer to your question, what you assume the answer would be, that would be fantastic. We have a couple of trivia questions that we wanted to ask today. And the first one that we wanted to ask is this: what sport does the term Nerf come from? So if you could jump down to your chat, and if you could start typing in what you think the answer is, what sport do you think Nerf got its name from? Football's one of the guesses. A couple of people going with football. Absolutely. New England round file. Okay. So it turns out, and I wasn't quite sure what to call it. I wasn't sure if it was an activity or a sport. I'm imagining that it is accepted as a sport. It's actually drag racing. Apparently, in the 60s, you would have the trucks that would push the drag racing cars up to the starting line, and they had a foam bar that was called a Nerf bar, and that foam bar protected the front of the truck and the back of the drag racing vehicle. And so I thought that was kind of fun. And so we'll have a couple other Nerf related trivia questions just a little bit later. So be looking at the chat in just a moment here. Another thing that I wanted to talk about this morning is how do we set up our events? And that is something that we've done over time. The first time that we did a Nerf battle, the way that we promoted it is come on down, bring a Nerf gun, bring your own ammo, and we'll play Nerf. And we didn't have a sign-in sheet. We didn't have anywhere for the students to put their stuff. And over time, we've obviously gotten a little bit better about the way that we set up our Nerf battles. And so right now, what I wanted to do was go over a little bit of those pieces there. Another thing, you might notice that a lot of the slides that I have are more just for the fun of having an image up there. We don't have a lot of information on the slides. What I'm going to be doing is creating a quick tool sheet that you're going to be able to look through. It's going to have a couple of the bullet points that we've been discussing. And I'm going to send that out to Nono, and I'm going to have her email that out to all of the participants within the next week. That way you have a little bit more information on how we set up our Nerf battles. It'll have a couple of links for further reading, just some articles that I found that were interesting. And it'll also have some more information that you can take. So right now, just kind of having that discussion across the webinar, and you'll be having a follow-up email that will have more information for you.
Nick, as this will be archived on YouTube,
fantastic.
For example, do you mind if we put those links to those materials online?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, we can definitely do that. We can definitely do that. So another thing, and thank you for that, Jeremy. I appreciate that. Right now, our setup process kind of looks like this. The student comes in and we have a sign-in sheet. There, we have two sign-in sheets right now. One sign-in sheet is going to be if you brought your own Nerf gun, and another sign-in sheet for those that are going to be borrowing library Nerf guns. That way, at the end of the night, we can just tell, hey, did you actually get all of your stuff that you brought with you, or did you just come in with just you? Oh, thank you so much for putting that library gun back. We appreciate that. Another thing that we have and that we do is we ask the students to write down an emergency contact number. In all of the years that we've been doing Nerf battles, we have not had a significant injury, which is something that we find fantastic. And we have had a couple of Nerf darts ricochet, hit somebody in the eye. It has not turned anything. There was another student that ran into someone else at our last Nerf battle, and he was bleeding just a little bit above his left eye. But those were the biggest injuries that we've had at our Nerf battles. But just in case something were to happen, we wanted to make sure that we had a grown-up that we could call. And so the student comes in, they write down their number, a parent's phone number that we'd be able to call, they write down their name. And at that time, we also give them a bracelet. And the bracelet is basically if you've gone to the North Idaho Fair, if you've gone to the Spokane Valley Fair, they have those paper bands that have the one sticky side that wraps around your wrist. And that is what we use here at our Nerf battle to tell the difference between our two teams. You can purchase those in a couple of different colors, or you can do it where one group of your students has the bracelets and one group of your students does not have the bracelets. That's another way to kind of divide them into your teams. Some of those scenarios don't require that you have teams, but some of them, if you're having capture the flag, it works really well to be able to identify what person's on your team and what person's not on your team. And so as students are coming in, if I know the scenarios are going to require knowing who's on whose team, I pass out the bracelets. And if I know that the 3 scenarios that we're doing that night are not going to require, it's just going to be zombie apocalypse, it's going to be tank battle, we're not going to have these large teams, then no one's going to need a bracelet, and so we don't pass those out, if that makes sense. Another thing that we offer recently is safety glasses. And you can get these very inexpensively on YouTube, which is nice. And once again, I'll create probably a PDF or a list of some of these things that we have. And Jeremy, thank you so much for being able to share those out to the participants and on that archive on YouTube. And so another thing, and we did that because one of the primary injuries that happens is a bullet might hit close to your face, on accident. We always encourage our students to do absolutely no headshots, but as you're shooting across the library, sometimes it might run into someone or it might get them close to their eye. And so giving students the option of having that extra protection. And then it's also good for our staff members to have the option of having that eye protection. We actually encourage our staff to be walking around during the Nerf battle. That way, if there is a conflict between two students, or there is someone that is obviously not following the rules, you have a staff member that is nearby that can be addressing that issue in real time, instead of just hearing about it from a participant at the end of that scenario. And so we do have our staff kind of walking around kind of in the middle of the fray. And so having those safety glasses is kind of nice. Another thing that we have implemented is the vault system. If you have a student that comes in with 10 Nerf guns, they got super excited. Oh man, I bought this one. We had this one in our closet. This is my younger brother's. A lot of the time what happened at our Nerf battles is the student would grab the one gun that they would want to use, and then all of their friends would borrow a couple of their other guns, but you have 2 or 3 that were still left in the box. They're left in the middle of the library, and then someone else is taking the gun, they're borrowing it, they think that it's open, they think that they can have it, or they have a bunch of Nerf ammo in there, and so they're grabbing this other person's Nerf ammo. Or you have your cell phone that you don't want to be carrying around with you while you're doing the Nerf battle. And so we wanted a safe place for the students to put that material. And so what we do is we have one of our meeting rooms set up as our vault, and the students put in things that they would like us to hold on to, whether it's their cell phone, whether it's an extra gun, whether it is a backpack. And we lock the room during the rounds. That way no one else has access to it besides a staff member. And the way that we run that is we once again just have the student write down their name, and we have giant numbers printed out on 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper. And we just scatter those pieces of paper around the room. And the first student that comes up is number 1. So their backpack goes in the number 1 spot. And then the second person has a couple of Nerf blasters that they don't want to be carrying around with them. So we put that in the number 2 spot. At the end of the night, we open up the vault and we say, oh, number 1, thank you so much. Grab your stuff. Here's that backpack for you. Number 2, thank you so much for coming tonight. Here's all those Nerf blasters. Hope to see you next month. And we have found that that vault system has alleviated a lot of those concerns, but also when that student comes up to you and, oh man, I don't want to wear my hoodie anymore. Do you have some place I can put it? Actually, I have a perfect place that you can put that. Another thing that I wanted to talk to you guys about is the ages for our Nerf battle. Right now, when we're doing our monthly Nerf battles, we have it open to 6th grade students up through 12th grade students. Our school system is set up as middle schools and high school. Middle school goes 6th to 8th, and then our high schools go 9th through 12th. And so we have students from 6th grade all the way up through 12th grade that come to our programs. And then we also have 1 or 2 younger siblings that also want to play. Or you have that person that he's in 4th grade, he's mature for his age, he can definitely come to your Nerf battle. What we find is if you have those younger students coming to your teen-only Nerf battle, a lot of your older students that are having a fantastic time that the program is built for, the teams that you have a hard time getting to come to other things, those are the students that kind of stop coming once you have that 3rd grader or that 4th grader or that 2nd grader come as well. And so we try to keep a pretty good cap on it just being, if you're in 6th grade, you can come. If you are going into 6th grade, yes, that would be okay. If it's in the summer, we say if you're going into 6th grade, then you can come. And then in the summer, if you just graduated from high school, yes, you can come for the summer, but then we're going to ask that you not be coming just to make sure, because this is going to be that teen program. And so keeping those ages intact has helped us make sure that it's actually going to be that teen program. But we also know that if you have a parent that's coming, they didn't know that it was just for the teens. They have those 3 students that are looking at you across your circulation desk as you're checking them in. You say, you know what, you didn't know. If you would like to play for this one day, that's going to be okay. But please know that this is for 6th grade and up. So you can play today because you're already here. Thank you for coming. But next month, we are going to ask that you not come until you're old enough. But another thing that we do is during the summer, we make sure that we do Nerf battles for just elementary school students. And so 6th grade and up are not allowed to come. It is just going to be those younger students. Something that we found with those younger Nerf battles is the students are actually better at following the rules at an elementary school Nerf battle. And one reason that we didn't want to do those younger Nerf battles is because we were afraid that the students would get hurt more, or they would have a hard time getting hit by those Nerf darts. But once again, those students that come are excited to play and they have a great time with it. So we don't mix those elementary school students with those middle and high school students, but we do have a lot of success during the summer doing elementary school only Nerf battles. And then during the school year, we also have those teen Nerf battles that are going on. Another thing that we are currently doing is we provide Nerf ammo for the students to use. And the reason that we did that is when we first started playing, a person would bring their gun and they would bring their Nerf ammo. And then by the end of the night, they would be spending half an hour after the program ended trying to find all of the darts that they marked with their name. And it just didn't work too well to do that. So now, the library offers elite ammo, and elite ammo is it fits in pretty much every Nerf gun that's on the market right now. And we provide that for the students to use. So the students at the end of the night, they can help us put it all into a bucket. But if there's 50 Nerf darts that are hiding in the library behind a bush, behind a book, you don't have those students that are going to be constantly looking around trying to find those Nerf darts. There is a new kind of Nerf ammunition that's just come out. It's called the Rival round. Rival is actually small foam balls instead of a dart. And we find that they work really well. At this time, we are not providing those Nerf darts, those Nerf balls, but the students that bring them, we let them know at the outset, if you're using those, it's up to you guys to find them afterwards. And it's also up to you guys to bring your own ammo. In the future, if we have, and the reason that we don't provide that ammo right now is the majority of our participants still use that elite ammo and guns that use that elite ammo. If more of our students start moving into those rival rounds, then we'll probably start providing those at that time. But right now it doesn't make sense because you just have those 3 or 4 students out of the 30 or 40 that come to your program that have that kind of ammo. So if you want to bring that specialized ammo, it's on you to find that ammo and to use that ammo if you want to do that. Another thing that we do is we do offer some guns for students to borrow. So many students bring their own gun. They got it for Christmas. They're super excited. But a lot of these students might not have a gun at home. And so we provide a couple of Nerf revolvers and Nerf blasters that they can use. And those blasters all use that elite ammo. At this time, I'm just noticing our time is quickly floating by us. So I actually wanted to do another quick trivia question for you, actually. So if you wanted to jump down into that chat window, and what was the first product that Nerf produced? That is your trivia question for this morning. What was the first product that Nerf produced? So we have a bow and arrow, a football, a ball is another option there. Another guess for football. Or drag race equipment, exactly right, exactly right. A pool noodle, there you go, another great guess. A foam ball. And Naomi and Jamie, you are exactly correct. The first product that Nerf produced was actually a 4-inch foam ball, and it was promoted as the world's first indoor ball. So it was safe to use inside, it was safe to use with your younger siblings, it was safe to use with a pet in the house, and that was actually the first product that Nerf produced. So thank you so much for participating once again. No, that's awesome. That's super cool. Nona was mentioning that she actually remembers getting one of those for Christmas. which is awesome. So another thing that we want to be talking about right now is our rules and guidelines. And something that I forgot to open up on my computer, I'm going to do that real fast, is our Nerf Squadron pledge. And the reason that we have our Nerf Squadron pledge is it just kind of creates the expectations for students. And that is something that we want to be doing for them. And so when we first started doing our Nerf battles and a student was not following the rules, we didn't have a agreed upon set of rules that we could call the student back to. It was more just common sense of, no, you shouldn't be cheating like that. So what we've done now is we've implemented the Nerf Squadron pledge. So at the beginning of our Nerf battle, what we do is we read this. I will respect my fellow players and library staff. I will respect my fellow players' belongings and the library's belongings. I will respect my fellow players' personal space and the library's space. I will respect the rules of the Nerf Squadron scenario as explained to me by library staff. I understand that I will be required to sit out rounds or leave the event if I do not respect this pledge. And setting that expectation at the beginning of the Nerf battle, first of all, it just alleviates a lot of those concerns because so many of those students are like, oh, okay, I know that I need to be doing this, but oh, they actually expect me to be doing this as well. Okay, I guess I'll follow the rules. Oh, okay, I'll leave that small Nerf gun alone. And another thing is if you actually are talking to a participant that is not following those rules, you have something to call back to. And remember at the beginning when we set our expectations, when we were doing our Nerf Squadron pledge, not doing that right now, this is going to be a warning for you, but it just gives you that common language that you can use with those students. And we find that to be encouraging. We also find that that works well for those students. Another thing that we have is off-limit areas. Basically, we obviously close down the staff areas, and we also have a couple of meeting rooms that we keep the doors closed to because we don't want students to be opening and closing doors just to make sure that everyone is going to be safe during the Nerf battle. And so kind of setting up, you have those off-limit areas that students are just not going to be going into. As I mentioned earlier, we encourage students to, we are not going to have any purposeful headshots here during our Nerf battle. If it happens on accident, we understand, but no intentional headshots, just to make sure that we're keeping those students safe. Another thing that we do, modding your own Nerf gun, so actually adjusting and changing, putting in a better spring, taking off the scope, taking off this piece, taking off that piece, or building your own Nerf gun, or building a blow dart or something like that. That's something that we also do not allow at our Nerf battles. Obviously, for a Nerf gun to go onto the market, it is something that has gone through so many safety regulations, and we want to make sure that we're bringing that same kind of safety to our students. And another thing that we do is some students have asked, hey, can I bring a shield, like the Nerf shield, or can I bring like the Nerf hammer or the Nerf sword? And that is also something that we do not allow at our Nerf battles, just to make sure that when people are coming expecting to play with Nerf blasters, they're also not getting hacked in the back of the head by a Nerf sword coming from behind. So just making sure that students have those expectations are being met. And we're also approaching 9:50 right now, and I want to make sure that we have some time to go over the questions that you have as we've been discussing. And so right now, wanted to share just some quick things that you can consider as you might be if you're excited about what we've been talking about today. Once again, feel free to contact me and I can definitely talk more with you about all these topics that we've been discussing. But some things to consider are, what are the primary obstacles you face in implementing a teen Nerf battle at your library? Is it space concerns? Is it staffing concerns? Do you think that your community might not be excited about it? Do you think that that your supervisor might not be a huge fan of the idea? what are going to be those obstacles that are going to kind of get in the way, and what are going to be those ways that you can get over that to offer these kind of programs? Another question, I talked about the kind of equipment that we have and that we provide, but what equipment will your library provide? Will you kind of go based on that very simple model of just having students bring their own Nerf guns? Or do you want to actually have kind of a box of Nerf guns that they would be able to use if someone doesn't bring one? And then another question to ask is, what scenarios will maximize the resources that you have? We find that our libraries, our Hayden Library and our Post Falls libraries are very large, and so we're able to maximize on that space in order to use those scenarios. But there was a time that we went up to our Pinehurst library, which is a much smaller library, and so in order to give the kids enough space, it was during the summer, but we actually set up the Nerf battle outside. That way because there was a nice grass area that the Pinehurst library has. And so thinking about what are those pieces that your library has that is going to make your Nerf battle the most fun for the students that are coming down. So right now we are just about to 9:50. And so I want to open it up to the questions that you have, and let's make it happen.
So Nick, this is Nono, and I will read you. The very first question was from me, and you actually answered it. Which
perfect.
How you sorted out the ammo at the end of the battle, because that sounded. But you answered that one.
Perfect.
Next question, it says, do parents complete a release form, for example, if in case their kid gets hurt? Do you have anything like that in place?
Absolutely. Thank you for that question. And the answer is, at this time, we do not. We operate under a implied consent. We promote this as a Nerf battle. Everyone that is going to be bringing their student to the Nerf battle knows that it's a Nerf battle. And so we take that as implied consent, that these parents know that their child might get hurt while this is happening. At this time, as I mentioned, there have not been a lot of injuries that have happened, which is also fantastic. When we were talking to our legal team and our insurance policy people at the library, they were letting us know that even if you do have a written consent form, that a member could still pursue legal action against you, even if you do have that written consent form. And so we did consider having that consent form that parents would have to sign. But at this time, our legal people and my supervisors decided that that implied consent would actually be kind of what we were working under.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
So we have a question from Melanie, who says, does anyone have 2 stories in their building? I'm trying to decide how to handle the stairs.
Absolutely. And Melanie, thank you for that question. That is something that our both libraries that we do Nerf battles at do not have stairs. And so that is something that we do not have to deal with. But I do think that that is an excellent question to ask. Something that I might do is possibly have a volunteer or a staff member that if a student wants to go from floor number 1 to floor number 2, it almost is like a no man's land or no person's land, that you have to be escorted by a staff member down the stairs. That way you don't have a student that is running for like full click and shooting at another participant that might trip and fall down the stairs. Or you could have it be that one scenario, this scenario, you are only allowed to be upstairs, and then another scenario, you're only allowed to be downstairs. And you would have that staff person, or that other idea of actually having it be that a staff person would have to be monitoring the stairs, and you have to be walking when you're here, and you cannot discharge your Nerf blaster while you're on the stairs. That way you're mitigating the accidents that can happen there.
That's good, quick thinking on your feet. So that leads perfectly into the next question, which is, how many staff members do you generally have at an average event?
That's a great question. For us, we typically have 2 staff members that are here. And what we find is the staff members are typically there for that setup process. They're also there for that check-in process. So when you have 30 teams that are there, you have teams that are trying to put stuff into your vault. You have people that are trying to ask you if you have a gun, if there's things to borrow. If you have those 2 staff members, we find that that helps that check-in process. And it also helps at the end. You can have 1 staff member getting things in and out of the vault and another staff member at the exit, just making sure that, hey, thank you for dropping that library gun back into the box. And, oh yeah, thank you for dropping that library ammo back in the box. And, oh, remember about our program next month. And so we actually typically just do the program with 2 people, but that's because and our programs typically have 30 to 40 middle and high school students that come down per event. If we started getting more like 50 to 60 students, there was one Nerf battle that we had 120 students come to our facility, and that was a little bit daunting with just 2 staff members. So it really does depend on how many students you're getting. And obviously, because it's after hours, just for the safety of the staff, we make sure we have at least 2 staff members that are there. But having 2 staff members and a couple of volunteers, it would not be a bad thing, especially if you do have students that are kind of pushing the envelope or they're not quite following the rules. Having just another volunteer or another staff member that would be able to walk around and monitor would definitely be helpful. We find that our students are pretty good about following the rules and pretty good at, just having 1 or 2 staff members walking around seems to be enough. But that would also be another consideration as you try maybe your first couple, you have more staff members. Then you're like, oh, we can totally do this with 2 people. Or you're like, oh, I'm so glad that we have 2 staff members and 2 volunteers here. This would be crazy with just 2 people.
And you have a question from Caleb that says, have you ever had a separate event for the sword or hand-to-hand Nerf weapons? Do you think this would be too much of a safety issue?
That's a fantastic question, Caleb. And at this time, we have not done a melee-only event. And that kind of gets into the idea of LARPing, that live action role play. And live action role play is something that our library has considered doing. We haven't done it at this time, but it's something that there is an interest in our area. And something that we have done, though, is we have done a Star Wars program where the students took a pool noodle, cut it in half, and that was their lightsaber. And we allowed them to do lightsaber duels. And with the pool noodle, we didn't put any PVC pipe inside. We didn't have anything going on. There was just a little bit of duct tape for the handle and then the pool noodle itself. And the pool noodle, if you got hit in the leg with the pool noodle, then you lost that leg in parentheses, and you had to hop around on your other leg. If you got hit in the chest, then you were done. If you got hit in the left arm, you couldn't use your left arm anymore. And so that's kind of a version of live action role play that we've done. And it was something that we kind of did as an experiment at that Star Wars program. And students are actually, they want to follow the rules in that particular case because they want to know that if they hit the other person in the arm, then that person would lose that arm. And so when they get hit in the arm, they're like, oh man, you got me. And so that's kind of that's the only version of live action role play or that melee weapon that we've done. And, but it's definitely something that we've considered doing, but we have not done that at this time. That's kind of what we've done.
That was great. Thank you. And Caleb says thanks. And
yeah,
that was the last of the questions. Does anyone else have any questions for Nick? Talk about perfect timing, Nick. You're right on target. Anyone else have any questions? Oh, someone says, are bow and arrows also prohibited?
With bows and arrows, most of the modern Nerf guns that are actually bows and arrows actually just fire darts. And they just kind of look more like a crossbow than an actual bow. If a student brought in an older style Nerf bow and arrow, because it was sanctioned by Nerf, I would probably allow it. But we'd also need to make sure that the student was being responsible with it. So that would probably be a case-to-case basis for me.
And she added but the ones that have the weighted ones, I don't know.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. There is the Nerf Rebels do have kind of those weighted arrows. And I do believe that we had 1 or 2 students that brought those, and they actually stopped bringing them because they found they didn't have enough ammo to use. So that would probably be that case-to-case basis if there's just like there's 1 or 2 students that bring in those rival guns with the special Nerf foam balls. And if they really want to use those and they want to keep track of their own ammo and they're being responsible with them, then yes, we'll make an exception and you can bring in that special gun. And I would probably do that with those Nerf bow and arrows as well. But it would also come down to the fact of how are they using them? How is it impacting the game? And is everyone being safe with them?
Another question just came in. Don't sniper rifles have different ammo? Would those be allowed?
With some of them, they do have different ammo. And if the student if they want to use their own ammo, they can if we're not providing it. And a lot of those rival balls are the ones that fly the furthest. And they're the ones that a lot of students are really excited about right now. And some of those sniper rifles do have different ammo. And so if they wanted to bring those in, they can, if they provide their own ammo. But it would also come down to, are they going to be going too fast for the scenario? I know that we're out of time. The one last thing I would mention is so many of those students will bring their Nerf like their sniper rifle about once, and then they realize that it just takes too long to load some of those larger guns. And so they wind up just going back to the pistol because so many of those scenarios just work better with that 6-shooter at your side instead of, ha, I shot you once. Oh no, now I don't have any more ammo left in my gun. So that's typically, a lot of those special guns typically take care of themselves because the students stop bringing them because they're just not as convenient as some of those other weapons they can choose from.
I actually like the idea of the library providing all the ammo just because it sounds like it levels the playing field really well for everyone. But
indeed,
like I remember I grew up in the era of super soakers, and
sure,
as they got more and more powerful, it's kind of, I remember we used to joke about, I got you wet, now I got you wetter, now I got you really wet, now I got you wetter and wetter and wetter. And like at a certain point, it's just overkill.
Absolutely,
so,
absolutely.
Anyway, any more questions for Nick? Or I think, and excellent timing, like I said, Nick. I really appreciate everyone coming. And as soon as we get the information from, well, this webinar is being recorded and we send the recording out to anyone who registered, even if they didn't attend, because a lot of people register knowing they can't make that time, but wanting the recording. And then you may get a follow-up email with the link that Nick puts together with his information. And thank you everyone for coming. And if you have just a couple more minutes, there's that 4-question survey will be on your screen when you shut things down. So thank you, Nick. This has been really fun. I imagine your teens must just adore you and your programs. You just sound like a barrel of fun.
They do have a lot of fun with it, which is awesome.
I bet. And what a great thing for them to see that librarians are not these, stuffy shushing people that we just run around and shoot Nerf guns or whatever.
Exactly, right? Yeah, definitely.